to another episode of We Speak Dispatch. We've got our usual suspects here. We got Joe and Doug and Glenna and John. Everybody's here. I'm Leslie, if you don't recognize me or my voice, if you're listening to this on one of the podcasts. So we're kind of new into 2021. And so as we start to look at and plan for the year unfolding, and we are keeping our fingers crossed that it's going to be a better year than it was last year, we were talking off on one of our breaks here about decisions that are being made or programs that are going to be implemented or things that may happen in this coming year. And I wanted to talk to you about this concept called groupthink, where maybe you've been a part of a meeting or you hear this idea that's being kind of tossed around, and in your mind you're thinking, oh no, I don't think that's a good idea, but everybody else seems to be on board. So my question to the group here, and for those of you who are listening on your way to work or maybe on your way home or just on an off day, is how do you, regardless of where you are in the organization, so please don't think that this is just for supervisors or for those who are sitting around the table. This is everybody. How do you diplomatically bring your ideas forward, or kind of not, I don't want to say contradict because that sounds negative, but how do you say, gosh, I just don't think that's a great idea. So I'm just going to throw it out to the group. Somebody give us a story. What happened? How'd that work for you?
All right, I got one.
Okay.
So I went to a training class that was mandatory. We had to go to this thing, and it was a bunch of people. I mean, it was not just dispatch. It was every rank you could think of. And the person teaching the class was a very high-ranking person in my department, very high.
Okay.
And he's talking about current events that have been happening. And he's talking about this one agency that he is claiming, oh, you know, this agency is so racist and they got all these problems going on and it's terrible. And I said, I'm sitting there going, that's not true. I mean, that was the media spin on this thing. And I've been there and I don't think it's true. So I'm like, I'm debating whether I should say something or not. And then the people sitting with me are like, say it. And I'm like, all right. I told him, I said, you know, I think you're kind of like really off the rails here talking about an agency's racist. You're blaming everybody for one person. And I think it's wrong to do, because I wouldn't do that for everybody in this room, say everybody's wrong because of one person. So I think you're at fault for doing it. And he was not pleased that I said that. He was
But good for you.
very not pleased, but I said, I'm sorry. And he kept looking at me and I kept going because I'm like, you don't want to stop me? I'll just keep going. So it was because it was true. It was, you can't blame an entire agency for one person making a mistake. And I'm like, you can't just say, well, this whole agency's racist. Well, that's not true. So
Right.
that may be not perfectly correct, but that was the way I jumped at it. So
yeah, for me, it was years ago. We were training an active shooter simulation at a large facility, a large business in the county that I was working in at the time. And we went to a pre-planning meeting, and the pre-planning committee said that we're not going to tell the employees this is a drill.
wow.
And I said, whoa. I said, we need to tell these people it's a drill. I said, the last thing we want to have happen is for somebody, to, have a concealed permit to carry and they are out and they're have it out in their car or whatever it might be, or somebody to panic and have a medical condition. These active shooter events are real. And I voiced my concern. I said I was absolutely against this in front of the employees at the business, in front of the responding agencies. And unfortunately, my opinion lost. So what I did was I documented it by an email to my directing board. And I said, dispatch will participate. But if we receive any 911 calls from the employees at the business, we are going to tell them this is a drill.
Good.
And I said, the only way I will change my mind is if this is overruled by the directing board. And I did not get overruled. And I went to the post meeting and there were some really pissed off, for lack of a better term, employees. And I understand why. I mean, here come the suspect, which was an undercover deputy. Okay. And he blows past the gate. They have their own security at this business. And he just blows past the gate, like the song, hit the gate, do a 98, let that deputy roll. I mean, the song Convoy came to mind. And I'd never seen something that was planned that way. And I was wholehearted. That's the strongest I've ever been against something in disagreement. So make sure you
Wow.
voice your concerns
God.
and protect yourself. And there were some upset people, but it went on anyhow.
That is crazy.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Set up
What
for
about you,
disaster.
John? Do you have something? Or
Nothing
how do you,
wonderful. Yeah.
how do you deal with that? Like Joe mentioned, you know, he voiced his opinion and Doug, you know, he brought it forward, but Joe followed it up with an email, you know, and depending on where you are in the organization, is that something that you would feel comfortable doing, or, and how do you document, hey, and it's not, you know, I told you so, but it was, you know, to like Joe said, kind of CYA, cover your agency. What have you done,
Yeah.
John?
At least there's something in writing that he put out there to refer back to. As far
Right.
as our folks, I think we're pretty vocal, so people really don't bite their tongues, be it at the console or away. They'll usually be respectful and diplomatic by talking with a supervisor or the manager or the director and say, look, this is where we're going here, and this is what should occur. These are some hurdles that we need to be on the lookout for, kind of thing.
Sure,
So I
sure.
think it's pretty open, and
That's good.
people just don't bite their tongue. I nothing like in a class like Doug comes out, but I wish I was in that
Wow.
class.
Yeah, that
Right?
would have been fun.
You
Yeah.
probably
What about
could
you,
have,
Glenna? What have been some of your experiences?
Well, for me, I can get extremely passionate, we'll say, about things, and so I really have to watch what I'm quote unquote passionate about, and I really have to pick my battles. So a lot of times, if something like that's happening, I'm going through my mind, okay, is this worth it? What's going to happen if I don't say something? What's going to happen if I do say something?
Yeah.
Just recently, I got a directive from the higher ups to do something that I not only had completely disagreed with, but the higher ups weren't in a trained position to be able to make that decision, and I am, and I didn't say anything, and so now we're dealing with the fallout,
Oh,
and people
wow.
are hurting because of the fallout that happened because I didn't say something. And so there's a lot of responsibility that if you know something is wrong and you know that it's going to be detrimental, like what Joe says, with the active shooter, if you know it's going to be detrimental, you have an obligation. In a previous episode, Leslie, you said something that is so stuck with me. We are public safety dispatchers, whether we're law enforcement, fire, EMS, we're public safety. And so if what we are doing or not doing is detrimental to public safety, we have a duty and an obligation to change that and to voice whatever's going on. So I think that applies here as well.
Yeah. And I think that the challenge, and maybe I'm just speaking for myself, but you know, if see something, say something. And sometimes I'm talking faster than my mind can catch up. And then you know, once those words are out there, it's like,
Oh,
maybe.
that's my
So-
biggest problem.
And I think just like everything else that we do as dispatchers, speaking up and down the chain is a perishable skill. And I
Yes.
think it's really important to practice how to be diplomatic. And it sounds crazy, but how to bring forward an idea that maybe is different than what's been presented, or if somebody, so maybe you are the one that's come up with the idea and then now you're getting feedback from other people. I really think that training and practicing how to be diplomatic is something that we should all do. And suggestions, John, how do we
one thing
practice that? What do we do?
One thing that one of my bosses earlier in the career said is, when you're that passionate, and this struck me, Glenna, because you were talking, is okay, put it on paper, but don't send it.
Yes.
And then just get everything out there. And that way, everything in your mind is noted, and then you can go back to it, particularly if it's like a Friday and you know the people are off Saturday and Sunday or a holiday, they're not going to read it Friday night. So they come back Monday. Who cares? Or even if your last shift is Monday and then you don't return till Thursday, who cares? They're still going to see it. And then reread it in a different frame of mind, and then send it later. That's probably been some good advice.
Good advice. Yes.
That's really good.
You know, I understand being you know, nice about bringing
Diplomatic.
topics up and things like that,
Mhm.
but I will tell you that in my career, that we used to have conference calls with all of the comm centers. It was 26 comm centers. We had conference
Oh
calls.
my God.
I know. And so I hate conference calls anyway, but people would be texting me saying, Doug, say something about that because that's ridiculous. And I'm like, they wouldn't feel that they could say it. And they were scared. And I'm like, I don't care. I'll do it. And usually on these conference calls, you had to say, hi, this is Jackie from whatever comm center. I never once said my name. I just said, oh, wait a minute, hold on. And they're like, yes, Doug. I'm like, because I said, I will be the one to say it. And I got a lot of kudos from a lot of people that said, thank God somebody spoke up about that. And yeah, that one meeting I just told you about a little while ago, I got a very stern talking to about that.
I bet you did, yeah.
But I kept telling the guy that was giving me the stern talking to, was I right? Was I right? You can tell me I did it wrong, but I was right. And it's like, sometimes.
Then why are we talking?
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to stand up for what's happening. Like, I mean, I agree with Joe when he had that thing. That is just dangerous to do that.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an unnecessary risk and it doesn't make any sense to me. So
No, it
Right.
didn't.
But, and Joe, I'm curious in that situation when you were bringing things forward, and for those of you who are looking now to practice how to be diplomatic, you know, being aware of your own perspective, because that's easy, because that's what's inside you. But taking that second or minute or day or weekend, like John's talking about, and look at it from a different perspective.
Yeah.
Because then maybe you're going to see something or realize something that, man, I didn't recognize. So Joe, with your situation, what was some of the feedback that you were getting as to why your opinion was really disregarded? What happened?
Disregarded mainly because they wanted to know where our shortfalls were, and they didn't feel people would take it real unless it was somewhat real.
Okay.
And I understood that, but I still didn't think the risk was worth the reward. And so what I did was I communicated that in a meeting. I followed it up with the decision makers one-on-one. And then I came back to the decision makers, told them where I stood on it, why I stood on it, said, we're going to disagree. I'll still participate. But I told them in advance, this is the email that I'm sending and this is how we are participating. So they weren't caught off guard by the email either. They knew exactly where it was coming. But when it comes to just inside the 911 center and dealing with coworkers, other dispatchers or leadership, I think it falls on knowing the people that you dispatch with. Like when I put out a change or something, and I know that my direct people are going to come in and they're either going to hate it or love it within about 2 minutes. This sucks or this is awesome. Those are the people that are going to make up their decision real quick. The influential people are going to come in and they're either going to cheer it on or they are going to try and just make that thing sink because they don't like it. And then my process oriented people that are going to say, how does this work from A to B to C to D? They're going to try to figure it out and try to break it. And then my people that are resistant to change and just hate change, they're just going to say, nope, not for me because it's different no matter what it is. So giving them people a little extra time to adapt. So I think whenever it comes to groupthink or a change or something along those lines, you also have to know your people and appreciate the different types of people so that you can get all sorts of kind of feedback.
Yeah, it's almost like you want to, like, okay, if I was working with Doug, and I knew just through historical interactions that Doug was going to be kind of that person who goes, hold on, time out a second, that he might be the first person I go to.
I was just going to say.
If I want to implement a change. So going to those people, like Joe, you're saying that are either going to love it or hate it immediately, give it to them first.
Yeah.
Get that feedback and then you can kind of impact or influence the silent majority. I don't know, Glenna, what's been your experiences with when you want something that you want to push through? How do you get that working in your favor?
That's been my biggest challenge because I always want to talk over people or I want to get my point across. Listening, you need to listen. So I'll do the same thing. I will go to somebody who I know is going to either play the devil's advocate or somebody who I know is against an idea. And I'll go to that person first and I'll say, give it to me, everything you got. Because if you can respond and defend your position in that way, then you've got a good thing. However, if they come back with a bunch of, well, what about this? What about this? What about this? And you can't defend your position, then guess what? You need to really be listening to that.
Right.
However, sometimes I am too passionate about something. And so I have to really watch what I'm saying. And so then I won't solicit the advice as well. So you really have to know yourself as well.
Yeah.
As you get older.
Sometimes you have to also, because maybe it's an idea that everybody's like, oh yes, that's going to change the world. That's awesome. And you walk into a meeting thinking, am I getting everybody's true perspective? So in that situation, even when there's this illusion of unanimity, that everybody's on the same page, that maybe at that point I would say, okay, John, I need you to play devil's advocate. I need you to be, I'm going to assign you the role of the dissenter. So now it's not personal to John. So now I'm not saying, oh, John's always going to say no. So but I'm
Right.
giving him an assignment. So it kind of forces people out of that comfort zone. And maybe in that conversation, something's going to come up that nobody else thought about and went, huh,
Yes.
yeah, let's
Yep.
delve into that a little bit deeper.
Leslie,
Yeah,
you bring up such a good point here. And I just have a unique experience just recently going from being a dispatcher to an interim supervisor. So just temporary while my supervisor's out on leave. And I have noticed that people that had no issue, had no issue telling me what it was really like before are very hesitant because I'm in this supervisory role. And I've noticed it a lot this last week with some stuff that we have going on. And so it goes back to, you have to build that trust with your people so that they're comfortable being able to tell you, no, that's not a good idea. And then being able to tell you why.
Yeah.
So that's a very good lesson learned that I had to, and I'm going back to being a night shift dispatcher in a couple of weeks here. And so I'm curious to see how they're going to react with me on the floor with them, and if they're going to give me their honest opinion then.
Yeah. And I think that for everybody who's listening, is how do you conduct yourself on the floor or when you come to work? Are you approachable? Even if you are a line level employee, are you approachable so that your peers think that they can come to you and exchange information? Or are you just, dyed in the wool? Anything management says, no way, or anything management says, oh, of course. And building those relationships, because ultimately I think this whole concept of groupthink and speaking diplomatically comes back to the relationships that we have with people. I think, the connectedness and your ability to be open to others' ideas as well starts with what kind of employee, what kind of partner, what kind of sounding board are you at the workplace? So that is this episode of We Speak Dispatch.
Nice.
You
Lots of
look at that
stuff.
timer,
And-
Doug.
yeah,
I just don't think Glenn and I are going to teach the class on how to be diplomatic. I don't think.
no. But I hope, and some of these ideas that we talk about here in We Speak Dispatch come directly from you, the viewers or the listeners, and groupthink and some of these things that maybe we're not thinking about have come directly from you. So if you've got an idea, you want to hear us talk about something, or you'd like to be a part of this panel, send us an email, wespeakdispatch@gmail.com. Joe, you are the go-to for where you can hear us and see us. Give us that list.
Yes, I love doing this. You can hear us on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Anchor, Pocket Cast, Breaker, Overcast, Stitcher, Radio Public, Castbox, podcast apps, Sods, Castro, Podhost, Listen, Radio something. It's kind of cut off on the app. So it's up to 12 different podcasts or your favorite platform.
Aww. So look forward to bringing your ideas to us. We will certainly kick it around and speak on it diplomatically, of course.
Yeah.
Have a great
For
shift.
dispatchers, or not so diplomatically.
Yes. Hopefully you are a part of our fan club. You've got your decal proudly displayed someplace. Send us a picture so we can see where it is. We got some other stuff in the mix for our fan
Get
club.
those
So
pictures in.
get that going. Have a wonderful day, shift, hour, weekend, whatever it is. Have a great one.
Bye, guys.
Hey, this is Jill, and you've been listening to another great episode of We Speak Dispatch, proudly sponsored by our friends at Zybex.